Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I am amazed. This was extremely fascinating. This is our very first podcast and I am joined by Sonny Ahmed. Over 40 years of experience, sold over 1 million steaks, yearly bringing in millions of pounds of profit, only to go and lose it all. This is a story of success and failure. This is the story of Sonny Ahmed. This is Hot Rock Cafe.
Before we start, I want to gift you something, which is a little book. You talked, when we met, you talked that you do a lot of dhikr and you practice dhikr a lot, so this is a book on dhikr.
Thank you very much.
So hopefully you enjoyed that, and
thank you very much for that. I'm speechless, man.
Give you a few extra details, inshallah.
Alhamdulillah. Excellent. Thank you very much for that.
No problem.
That's much appreciated.
So, before we get into the main story of your life, of how you got to where you are today, just a few quick fire questions.
Okay.
They're going to be a bit of fun. They're not going to be too detailed, but it'll be interesting to see what you say. So, number one is, if you're in a cooking competition with Gordon Ramsay, steak competition with Gordon Ramsay,
Okay.
do you win?
100%.
Why?
Because I've got better techniques than him. I've sold more steaks than him.
Sold more steaks?
I've sold more steaks than him.
There was a magic number I read, it was 1 million plus.
Well over a million.
Well over a million.
Well over a million.
We'll get into that shortly. So, you're winning against Gordon Ramsay then?
Yep.
So how are you cooking a steak then? Are you having it rare, medium rare, well done?
Well, this is a bit of a fallacy, you see, because it's... Someone brings a pizza to the table, it is what it is. You know, you eat... Someone brings a curry to the table, someone brings any kind of food to the table, but when it comes to me, everybody becomes very particular about what they want, whether they want it rare, they want it medium rare, whether they want it well done. Gordon will say, well done is, you're wasting the meat. Mr. Munchbox will say I'll be, chewing on a tyre. I disagree, because it all depends on the quality of the meat and what you do with it. I would say probably for me, again, it's all very subjective and down to, and that's what's fantastic about steaks. It's all down to the individual and the way you want it, and that's where I saw this concept, and I thought it worked perfectly for this industry. And I'm surprised it's not taken off in England as much as it has done now. When we first started doing this, there was nobody on the mainland that did this.
So you're talking about your hot rock on the rock plate, which you were the first. I
was
believe.
the first person to do a dedicated restaurant on mainland UK.
In entire UK, so
Yes.
it wasn't just in that
No,
south
there
area.
was various people that were doing it as an add-on to the menu. It was a bit of a novelty, this and that and the other.
Right.
But we were the first people to do a dedicated restaurant solely to hot rock. So if you walked into my restaurant and you said you wanted a steak cooked for you, we don't have the facilities for that. Everything that we did came on the hot rock.
I'll get into how you came across that idea and why, but before that, I like steak. I like to eat a lot of cuts of steak.
Okay.
My favourite's probably the ribeye. I think it's got the most flavour. But tell us a bit about the different cuts. What's your favourite cut?
I would agree with you, because again, it goes against what you've been told or what you've been taught or what you hear in the media, or what chefs actually Gordon's favourite cut is, the ribeye.
Okay.
Because where there's fat, there's flavour.
Right.
But historically, we're told fat's bad for you, fat's bad for you. Everything's bad for you unless you have it in moderation. Now, when it comes to a steak, where there's fat, there's flavour. A lot of people, especially here and we've up and down the country where we've been, will go for a fillet. I personally won't have a fillet. I don't think Gordon will have a fillet, because although it's very tender, because it's a muscle that doesn't do anything, it's lacking in flavour. In actual fact, I'd probably say the rump had more flavour than the fillet. However, if you really want to enjoy your steak, you're going to go for something either the sirloin or the ribeye, and our choice cut would probably be the ribeye.
Well, after we're done here, I'm going to put my trust in you.
Inshallah.
Give me a nice piece of steak. So, that'll be good. So, I'm really interested in your story because last time we spoke, you mentioned you've been through a lot. You've had a lot of challenges, but I guess first take us back to where your childhood essentially. You started at 14.
It's the age of 14, correct?
So what is that? That's about 40 years of experience there, isn't it? Up to today.
Thereabouts. So it's a lifetime's worth of experience. Alhamdulillah. So my father opened his first restaurant in 1981, and that was a restaurant called Mughls in Keighley.
Okay.
And the property was purchased in 1980, and then it was operational in 1981. Like we say, it was called Mughls, and first few years were hard, from what I can remember, because I was only 10, 11 at the time, and then slowly picked up, and then in the boom years in 85, 86, it really, really took off. When I was at the age of 14, as it is now, and always has been, there was always staffing issues, getting the right quality of staff, and X, Y, and Z. It was always a problem, still is today. So being a young lad, I always wanted to be involved in the world and in the business world, and my father once took me in. Normally I'd help out in the kitchen when ad hoc, when I was needed. But on this one occasion, my dad says, put a shirt on, you're working in the front. Remember, I was a shy lad. Not that you'd think that, but I was taken to the front, and obviously my dad knew everybody, or knew all the customers, and he took me up to this one table, and he turned around and said, "This is my son," and then turned around and walked off. And I was there, so I sort of left sort of speechless, thinking, what do I do here? But the people were nice. I later found out they were the Duxburys, so basically they owned a company called Magnet and Southerns, which is now called Magnet, the kitchen people. So they were based out in Keighley. Lovely people, like I said, they made me feel welcome, asked me about school, how my studies, and the rest of it. And since then I haven't really sort of shut up. I talk to anybody and everywhere. In actual fact, when I'm on the tube and I'm talking to people in London, they all think I'm a bit crazy. But it brings a smile to people's faces.
So take me back then. So you're a young kid, you're 14, 15 years old.
Yep.
Why do you want to go into what your dad's doing? Because a lot of kids nowadays and a lot of people usually, they don't want to jump into the same industry as their parents, or they don't want to work under their parents. They want to do something completely different. They want to be separate. What was going through your mind?
What I think is, and what sort of transpired, is that the customers that we had, although Keighley wasn't very wealthy, still isn't very wealthy, had a lot of very wealthy suburbs around it, and they were the kind of clientele. We had a really good clientele, and when you've got good clientele, the restaurant environment's perfect for networking. It brings you out of your shell. I mean, I was going to say, if anybody's got confidence issues, and if they work in a restaurant, a popular restaurant, you start interacting with people, this and that, and it really is fantastic for your social skills. What helped sort of work there was the clientele were very, very good. These customers all became friends. And in some cases we had 4 generations of the same family coming to the restaurant. So that's what helped. But again, the restaurant environment, when you have that kind of restaurant where you have Duxburys from Magnet Southerns, the people that used to run O&K, the Escapades people, now known as Coney. We had the various directors of Huddersfield Town, Halifax Town, Bradford City, Mark Lawn used to come in all the time. Peter Risdale who used to own Leeds United at the time. We had very sort of, they were decent, they were top of the game, and nice people. And like I say, again, it became very sort of a networking thing without technically networking. You get to know a lot of people in this trade. Perry's Motor Group, the managing directors who owned Farnell's, the Range Rover groups. You get to know these people, and they're all connected. They all know the people, and it's networking without networking. You get to know, especially if your product's good. And our product was always good. That's one thing I learned from my dad. He says, it doesn't matter if business goes up or goes down. Keep your product good, and inshallah you'll make it. You'll be consistent. So we always had decent clientele, really good clientele. And then that sort of, when you're in that environment, it's very easy to become very comfortable, and that's what we were. Very comfortable in the trade. and you're meeting lots of lovely people, and why would I go into something else? Well, all my friends were studying medicine and pharmacy and
The standard,
the
standard
and I think
Pakistani.
I went to Bellevue Boys in Bradford, and I think out of my year, nearly everybody was either those three were a doctor, pharmacy, or a pharmacist or a solicitor, and then there was me in the restaurant trade. So, well, alhamdulillah, we had a very good time, and that then led on to the purchase of the Bombay Brasserie, which we had in Bradford, and that was Jeff Banksbury he's a stylist. He said it was one of the best restaurants and most beautiful restaurants he'd ever seen, and we did some, like I said, it was picked up and used for an aerial advert, which is still on the YouTube. So there's we were at the very top of our game. Didn't really choose to get there, it's just how it happened, because the certain players that we put into play, or the certain standards we put into play, just naturally took us to where it was. Remember, my father had no industry experience in the restaurant trade, and a lot of it was luck.
So he started from scratch.
Very much so. It was just doing things right, treating the customers the way we wanted to be treated, and always never giving up on the standards, whether that was service, whether it was the food. The standards were always very, very high. And that ultimately took us to where we wanted to be. So,
what were you guys doing in your Mughls restaurant? And
it was Indian food, typically Bengali Indian food or Bangladeshi Indian food, and it worked well. I mean, when we were trading there, we were on a par with well-known brands like Nawab, Agra, Mumtaz at the time. We used to hold our own.
Because this was the 80s and 90s was when these companies were really starting up.
Top of the game, yeah. Very much so.
My dad's always telling me about how great certain places used to be.
Yeah.
They're saying they used to come to Mumtaz when it was a small little...
when it was a pan house.
Yes,
that's right.
Exactly.
And
they used to eat there.
They grew and they kept growing.
So, how did you guys deal with that challenge? How did your father deal with it? Considering he's not...
Yeah, and I don't think it was never us versus them. We all sort of worked together. But as long as you held your own, and it was all down to your standards, because remember, these customers that we had, they weren't exclusively our customers. They would go to all the other restaurants as well. Yeah. So if a regular customer to us was someone that would come maybe twice a month, and if they came more than twice a month, they were a very regular customer. But this same clientele would go to other restaurants. So they would one week they would be with us, then they'd be dining at Agra or Nawab's or this and that and the other, because we'd see them at other restaurants. We'd dine out ourselves. Remember, it's a closed shop. We know everybody in the trade knows each other. We all shop from the same place, all the fresh markets and all that stuff, same sort of suppliers. So we get to know everybody very, very easily, quite well. So. And then when you're visiting or you're going and having a meal, you'll see your customers having a meal out, and that's what they do. And that's just in the Indian. Then they'll eat Thai, they'll have Mexican, they'll go for pizzas. So yeah, people dine out at a variety of places. So as long as you keep your standard high, alhamdulillah, you should do well.
So how many years were you with your father before you opened your own?
Well, my father passed away in 1991. I was at the tender age of 19. I just sort of turned 19 and 6 months, and my father passed away, which was a big shock to the whole family. He was the glue of my family, and he was the leader of not only my family but the families of the brothers, my uncles, that were all sort of together. It was a big shock, and we lost our way slightly, as you do when the leader of the pack sort of is no longer there. Personally, it was very, very difficult because I was still a young man, and then we still had the businesses, so the business still had to, to be run. At that point, we also had the Bombay Brasserie, which was doing very, very well. It was difficult, but you get on, and as a Muslim, you should know that death is very much a part of life. But we miss him, I know my brother and myself, my elder brother and myself, we miss him terribly, because he was such a big part of our lives.
So talk me through that time then. So you hear that your father's passed away. What's gone through your mind? How did you deal with it?
Well, strangely...
Being 19 as well.
Well, strangely enough, I used to go to the fresh market the day my father passed away. It was actually the day he was supposed to come out of hospital. and I went to the fresh market, and the fresh market opens at 6 o'clock. So I wouldn't be getting up at 6 o'clock. I was at the doors at 6 o'clock. So and we used to do the bazaar or the shopping for both restaurants, and I think it took 4 or 5 hours for them to get hold of us because we kept going, they kept missing us, and it was a surreal moment because as soon as I heard there was something wrong, because it was drilled into us, always make sure everything's done right, make sure the bazaar is put away properly, because we were spending £4,000 or £5,000 in the morning, you know. And my first concern in my head was, you know, I've got £5 worth of shopping in the back of the van, make sure whoever puts it away properly, because that's how things were drilled into us. We were taught how to work, you know. And the rest of it sort of falls into place. You know, you go, I remember going up to the hospital and when I realised there was something wrong, because nobody told us what was wrong. I mean, my first inclination was when I got to my house and the whole street was in my house apart from anybody that lived there. So there was nobody there. My mother wasn't there, my sisters weren't there, nobody from my immediate family there, but the whole street was in my house. And it was a very surreal moment. And
so
then,
did you know at this point that your father's passed?
No, I just knew that there was something wrong.
Okay.
And we were quickly shepherded into a taxi, my brother-in-law and I got up to BRI, and I just, before the car even stopped, I sort of ran to where my dad was last when I visited him the day before. I actually ran past my family because I was in a tunnel zone, so I actually ran to the bed where my dad was, or where he was previously, and just broke down. I'd actually run past my family and in the room that my father was in. Difficult, you know, it's always difficult when you lose a parent, especially when he's the glue of the family. You learn to deal with it, you know. 32 years on, we're still dealing with it. But alhamdulillah, you know, Allah knows best. You deal with it.
So how did you keep strong? How did you not
well,
give? Because it's very easy to give up at such a test in your life, because it is a test.
No, alhamdulillah, yeah, of course. I was very lucky. I had an exceptional group of people in my life. I say Allah works in mysterious ways. What's funny was
100%.
A very good friend of mine who's a pharmacist, of course he would be, and another one who was a doctor, of course, because that's what we studied at school, and another one who was in IT. They were very, very close around me, and in actual fact the pharmacist, my father was up at Schoolmore Cemetery where my dad's buried, but we were visiting my uncle up there, and I went to do something, and my dad actually said to my friend Muhammad Ali, he's a pharmacist in Keithley, my dad pulled into one side and says, you know, he's your very good friend, make sure you look after him, you know, he's very close to you. And 32 years later we're still like that, you know. And alhamdulillah, the friends I had around me during the first 40 days, when I woke up they were there, when I went to bed they were there, and they were my backbone. They really, really were.
What do you think's changed in modern society? Because friendships like that are hard to come across these days.
Very, very hard.
You know,
Wallahi billah, I can say that every friend I ever had, I still have. If they're still in this world, I still have them. I may not be in touch with them as much as I was, but every friend I ever had, I still have. And that's a blessing in itself. Like I say, you surround yourself with good people. Alhamdulillah, there's very little that can go wrong. And these people are, laugh and joke with their one hand and two fingers. You know, they've all got nice daddies now. But you know, like I said, we used to have a laugh and a joke in the back there. But they were fundly from very good families. And our friends as such were, if one of us were wrong, the others would have no qualm about telling us we were wrong and putting us back to the straight and narrow. And you know, and that's a blessing in itself. You know, they're very learned people. Some of them actually lived in Saudi, in Mecca for a number of years. And in actual fact, I think their first Hajj, they didn't fly there, they trekked there, they did it the old-fashioned way, yeah.
From where?
from here, from England, all the way.
They
through.
walk from here to.
Yeah, they trekked there from bus, wherever, however they got there. They went from there down through Syria, through Lebanon,
Wow.
down here. It was. They said the journey itself was quite amazing. So, alhamdulillah, and these are very close people to me. So, very, very close people. These are my brothers, as I say, brothers from another mother. They are very, very close to me, and like I said, they're still in my life now, as they were back then.
And how have you kept them? So what do you think is the defining factor that's kept your relationships? Because like there are a lot of people that I'm not in touch with, that I was friends with at school, or that I was friends with at sixth form or something, or at university.
Listen, people get married, they have children, there's always going to be pulls on their time, and then there's the working life. You get pulled away, but as long as, I think I went a period for a number of years without seeing some of my friends, but when they're true friends, where you can meet them after 7 years, and it's like you saw them yesterday. And like I also left Bradford. I went to live in other places. I made the Isle of Man my home from 95/96, and that's still my place of residence. But it's still coming back to Bradford and keeping in touch and making the effort, because everybody can be bogged down in life. But if you've got true friends, they keep you on the straight and narrow, and they're always a very good source of strength. If you ever need them, they're there. They know you sometimes better than you know yourselves, and it's imperative to have good friends. I read an article the other day that says the youth of today, 1 in 10 has no friends, and that's alien to me, because especially from Bradford, you go somewhere, I know everybody, but knowing everybody is the norm. And having very, very close friends was the norm, is the norm to me. I couldn't imagine life not having Muhammad Ali, Doc, Nadeem. These are my friends from school. And even my English friends or German friends, or what they are, my Caucasian friends. Again, I actually joined Facebook just to keep in touch with my friends from school. And again, it's very, very active. We talk about Heater Middle, where I went to, and then I went on to Bellevue Boys. Again, very, very close, 40 years on, 50 years on from when we first met.
I guess it comes back to this point of where technology has taken us. I guess that's probably why I'd say the figures are probably a lot higher. I'd say it's a lot higher than 1 in 10. I guess it's because we've lost that art of communicating with people. We don't know how to talk to people anymore.
That's true, because in the olden days, especially in the restaurant trade, it's like my father dropped me in on the deep end, and I laugh and joke and say, I got talking and I never shut up. But again, it's a skill in itself. I sit down with, I've been lucky enough, I sit down with paupers, I'll sit at a table with billionaires, not millionaires. And I'm quite comfortable with everybody. I'm very comfortable with people of major politicians, I know, major heads of industry, I know, personally, and they're all people, and I've always found that humour breaks down any kind of barrier there ever was.
Yes.
If you can have a laugh and joke, well, the barriers are gone immediately. But like I say, I think technology is good and bad. It all depends on how you use technology. I use it to keep. I used to call Facebook Wastebook. But my nephew Ishi, he says, "Uncle, it's not what you think about it; it's what your customers think about it." And we basically, I started using it, but I predominantly use it to keep in touch with friends and family, and that's it. So I don't know about this day and age. The youth of today have different pressures on them. I wouldn't like to be youth of today. I think what we grew up with, the values that we grew up with, far, far better than the values or what's being pushed upon them now. I actually find it quite sad what's being pushed upon them.
Give me some, what's going on?
Well, the confusion about gender and all the rest of it, ultimately we're Muslim.
Of course.
We follow certain certain guidelines, and we know what our identity is. And that was also a founding sort of thing that we always had, because where I lived, which was down Cornwall Road, we had the first purpose-built mosque in Bradford there, which was a Tawakkali Mosque. I don't know if you know, it's behind Valley Parade.
Okay.
And for me, the azan used to go out over the valley along Canal Road. You could hear it up in Undercliff 40 years ago. We were quite lucky that we had that. And again, I was growing up during the times when there was the strikes, or there was the for halal meat in schools. I saw all this. I grew up when we had the coal strikes, when I thought that was actually civil war in the UK, or that's how close it came to.
Really?
Yeah. I don't know if you're aware of that, but
no.
When the miners' strike, we were
I've
told
heard about the Margaret Thatcher.
That's right. It was bordering civil war in this country.
I didn't know it got to that stage.
Yeah. It was as much they wanted to damp it down. That's what it was. It was a very sort of sad time in the UK. We've had to fight for a lot of stuff, what we wanted at school. Alhamdulillah, that's one thing that I loved about Bradford. There was always at the forefront of what we wanted for our deen. When I eventually moved to Portsmouth, I was once reading my namaz, and I heard there was a zanaza, and I always like to take part in a zanaza if I can. So I turned up the next day after Zohr, and I says, but there's a zanaza today. They said, no, it took place in the morning. And I says, well, how come? This is, well, because the funeral directors can only do it in the morning, which was alien to me, because here in Bradford we have our burials when we want it to be. Yeah. So when you go out to other places and they're still very lacking, and I'm only talking a couple of years ago, it's a bit of a shock to the system to see that they're not as advanced as we are here. So being in Bradford is a blessing, and always has been, to be honest.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I say that to a lot of people, minus the Arab states, which are Muslim, from the western side, out of the entire western globe, I think England is the best place for Muslims. Especially the fact that we're close to Bradford, where it's just normal living as a Muslim, seeing people practicing your religion, going to the masjid. Whereas in other countries, especially like we're seeing in Sweden, where they're starting to burn the Quran now, and in other countries within Europe, France, for example.
I was down in Cornwall, and I was talking to some people, and I overheard someone saying, doesn't he speak good English for an immigrant? And I was actually looking around thinking, who's this immigrant? And then I realised that she was talking about me. Wow. So then I tried talking like this, but it's very difficult for me to do that, to put the Indian accent on anyway. But it's, at the end of the day, our forefathers came here. They were economic migrants. They came here because they were employed here, and they then made what they thought was a better life for their children. Do I think that's the case still? Probably not. And I'm very aware of a number of families or a number of people that don't want to live in England anymore because of the way things are going, and are quite happy to move to the Middle East. And actually preparing that, thinking of that, it's in their thought process of maybe going to Turkey, or because that's got a good blend between East and West, or going to live in places like Qatar, and other places in the Middle East where they can live a Muslim lifestyle. Because you can if you're strong, but our people tend not to be. There's so much division between themselves that they get led very easily, and I think they're being led down a certain path which is at odds with our principles.
It's very difficult, Islam has always been the center talking point. With the media always attacking us, newspapers,
That's
everything. Alhamdulillah, now I think we're gaining some ground back. Alhamdulillah,
we're getting because we go against everything that they stand for.
Yeah.
Islam goes against everything that we stand for. Or Islam goes against everything that the West want. The LGBT, this, that, the other, all this mixture of gender. It goes against all the principles of Islam. And again, how they want to divide and conquer, and because their king is the pound, it's the book, it's money, and they want to divide everybody. Whereas Islam is, all inclusive. It wants to bring people together, and it's always going to be at odds with what they want, because Islam is their enemy. how do we integrate here? It says that we're meant to integrate into the countries and follow the laws of the country that we live in, alhamdulillah, but not to the point where we lose our identity.
Yes.
And that's what's happening now. I mean, I have nephews and nieces that go to school, and if they question certain things about this gender role and this and that and the other pronouns, they say, you know, if you don't like it, leave this school, go to a school, you know, this school isn't for you.
Wow.
Wow, why is something that has always been there being thrown down our throats, shoved down our throats, you know, to the point it's becoming, they want it to become the norm. It's not the norm. It's not even the majority. It's still a minority of the minority. I mean, this LGBT, the L and the G don't get on with the T, you know. So why they've all been banded together and they are this rainbow flag or whatever they are, you know, it doesn't make sense to me. But it doesn't need to make sense. And like as it says, the lie will become the truth, and the truth will become the lie.
Yes, from the hadith.
And
yes.
That's what, if you tell the truth, now there's something wrong with you, and you tell a lie, that's perfectly fine. You know, I don't understand how our leaders, or the leaders of the parties, can't explain what a man and a woman is. You know, what's a female, an adult? You know, what's a woman, an adult female?
Yes, but
Simple,
politics itself in this country
but the thing is, our people
big decline.
And sadly, knowing quite a few of these politicians who sit on the fence because it serves them to do so, you know.
Very sad.
Yeah, like I said, we had the chap in Keighley, the mayor of Keighley, who was I don't know, something to do with a flag, but then he sort of said that was his mistake. It's not a crime to have morals, and it's not a crime to defend those morals, even if it goes against or odds with the parties that you may be involved with. It's not one size fits all. That's why we have different shops that we have different sizes.
Yeah.
You're a XS and I'm an XL times 2 or 3 even. So, you know, there isn't one size fits all, and we should stick to our principles first and foremost, especially as we're Muslim. And in Islam, we're defined by everything, isn't it? Everything's defined there for us. I don't know why people deviate from that.
It's the society we're living in. I've seen a lot of kids, Muslim young kids, go down very strange paths where they've lost their deen, or they've lost their morals or something, because maybe it's from our side, maybe we're not teaching them, or the strength of, you know, the opposition in the society, you know, how powerful they are in pushing their agenda across. It's very difficult times that we live in. And you know, what are you telling your nephews, your kids?
Well,
what are you telling them?
Alhamdulillah, my kids are grown up and they're brought up very strong in their deen. So I'm very fortunate that I've sort of passed all this that is very much at odds with where I think at the moment.
Yeah.
And if my kids were growing up in this sort of day and age, I would be having a lot of problems, and I would probably have a lot of fights with the schools or the establishments that are at the moment. When you talk about our division, maybe you are right. You know, how often do we sit down with our kids, find out what's going on, involve them
Yes.
in our world, tell them our morals, our standards, because it's very easy to fit into the world that we live in. I did it, you know. I fit in with the East and the West, you know, but I know what I am, who I am, and how I'm going to be buried, where I'm going to be buried, inshallah, and how I'm, you know, the rites that are going to be performed at my burial. I'm very aware of that because I'm very aware of death. You know, there's not a week goes by that I don't attend a zanazah of someone that's close or a friend. And unfortunately, at that age, my age now, that's going to be the norm. It's only going to get more.
Yes.
You know, I'm going to be attending more funerals of people that I've loved ones, friends and family. Unfortunately, you know, there was a lot of culture involved in our brand of Islam. Hopefully that's being pulled apart now, so we can, you know, be Muslims properly, and get rid of the culture from it. But
yes.
Again, when you've got kids that are bringing up kids and having children, how do they, you know, they need to be involved in their kids' life, and they need a lot of guidance. a lot of guidance, and that's where they need to be going to the mosque. The mosque needs to be doing their Friday khutbahs in English, in a language that they can understand. They need to be talking about relevant things like what's going on, counteract what's they're being taught in the schools. Go to the schools by all means, listen to what they've got to say, but say, that's not for me, thank you very much. Have the right to say, I want to be excused. I'm listening to what you're hearing, what you're saying, but I don't agree with what you say. Yeah. Because for me, there's two genders. There's there's male and female. It's as simple as that. I don't care where you could bring your other 100 and whatever it is, genders. As far as there's male and female, and that's always will be. Like I said, they need their parents, and they need parents to be an active influence on their life, countering what they're hearing. But if their parents don't engage with their kids, how are they going to, or set these boundaries, or set the parameters? How are they going to do that? I don't know. 100%.
And that's what I've not just seen, but I've been told by people elderly to me, that that's what's been targeted, is that family unit.
Correct.
That's what has been broken apart, and that's why they're able to have the effect on people that they are, because now they're not targeting a group mentality, they're targeting individuals now.
Yeah, and they're doing it to the kids, and it's always been the case, divide and conquer.
Divide and conquer.
Yeah, unity is strength. If we all band together, we're strong. In Bradford, if every Muslim parent turned around and said, this is not acceptable, the people that, in the powers that be would give in. It's just that we don't have this unity. We don't have our unity in ourselves. How are we going to present that united front?
It reminds me of a quote from, I think it's during when the Ottomans were around, when we had the Khilafah, when we had a Muslim nation, or it could be when there was the British Muslims in India, not sure exactly when, but it was a British general that he went to India, or as the Ottoman Empire, either. He's seen the Muslims, he's gone there on a mission to see how can we destroy them, how can we take their land, how can we conquer them. He's come back. What is reported is he's told the generals of the British Army, the higher officers, he's told them, look, we're not going to conquer them with weapons, because their love for their religion is too strong. When they stare down the barrel of a gun, they see heaven.
Ameen.
They are willing to sacrifice their blood for their religion.
Of course, that's what it
We're not going to defeat them in this way.
Well, that's why they lost in Afghanistan, whoever they are, the Chinese, the Russians, the Americans. These people, when they see 28 US soldiers in front of them, they see heaven.
Exactly.
Knocking on heaven's door.
And the interesting thing, what you said afterwards, but what I have seen is that the way to conquer these people is to destroy the love that they have for their prophet, destroy the love that they have for their religion.
It's not going to happen.
If we can break that, then we'll conquer them.
Not going to happen.
And that is what they're trying to do. They're trying to destroy our love for,
as they say.
We see all sorts of things being portrayed about the Messenger of Allah ﷺ and our religion, and verses of Quran taken out of context, hadith taken out of context, and they try their hardest to destroy it.
They plan, but Allah is the best of all planners.
Alhamdulillah.
And they'll never break that, and that's why, let's say, they can try, they're going to try their best, and but they will never be. As long as I can't ever see how they're going to make us leave our religion. They can try. I'm not the perfect Muslim, not at all. I always say to everybody, I'm gunagar, I'm badmash, I'm chor, I'm everything. But I'll say it straightforward. I says, but you know what? I'm a love for Allah. As long as I've that, then I've got, a chance of rectifying everything that I did wrong. Inshallah.
Exactly.
Because I used to sell alcohol. I mean, that's one part of my story. I had, in the restaurant trade, I used to sit with, captains of industry. I used to sit with a guy called Guy Ferran, CEO of Marks and Spencer's food division. That's, like this on a table. Sit with Charles Wilson, CEO of Booker, and then he merged with Tesco's. I'd sit on the table. I'd see Charles once a week. I demanded a 40-foot container of halal T-bone off him. It took me 4 years to get it, but I got it. But the thing is, we shaped halal policy at Booker's. Bradford, Leeds, Portsmouth, Houston, Birmingham, different. So we shaped the halal policy there. So we always wanted to, going back to the restaurant thing, I always wanted to break that glass ceiling. Became so close to it. But
so let's move on to that then.
Yeah.
So your father's passed away.
Yep.
You've taken the business, Mughls.
No, father passed away. Then my brother ran it.
Your brother
my older
ran
brother, he
Right.
went and other family members ran that. Also relinquished control of the Bombay Brasserie. My brother-in-law ran that.
Okay.
I then went out to the Isle of Man.
Why did you go there?
Well, it was initially to help. So they have what's called the TT, the Tourist Trophy, it's motorised cycle racing, and initially it was just to help them through that busy period. They do that. The trade they do there pays for the whole year.
Okay.
The island is about 80,000. They call it 80,000 alcoholics clinging to a rock. But then during the TT, you'll get another 30,000, 40,000 bikers come onto the island.
Right.
And it's an island that doesn't have any speed limit. So where you see a national speed limit sign, it means it's unrestricted. So if you can do 200 miles an hour, do 200 miles an hour. They can do you for dangerous driving, but they can't do you for speeding as such. So yeah. So I worked well there because I like a bit of speed.
You must have had fun driving.
Yeah. It's a bus overtaking a cop at 150 miles an hour. Anyway, but like I say, it's a bit of fun. A lot of people die there because they don't know how to drive or ride. But that was I sort of left Bradford, and where there's most people always live within a 10-mile radius where they're born. I've travelled and I've travelled the world. So went to the Isle of Man, had some businesses there, did all right. Came back to England. Went on holiday to Mallorca for 8 days. Came back 3 years later.
So you went for 8 days and
yeah. Funny how things work out. Yeah. So basically, a friend of mine was opening a restaurant up out in Mallorca in Palma, and I happened to be there when he was having a quote for some extraction, and because we're Bradford born and bred, when we see someone being ripped off, we get involved, and someone gave him a quote of I think €4,500, and I opened my mouth and says, that's £1,000 back in Bradford. Anyway, because my friend was from Wakefield, he says, let's see if we can get hold of it. So I got in touch with Fizza from Eastern Catering, did some measurements and all the rest of it, had it delivered to the island for £1,200. Where's £1,200 and where's €4,500? So I thought, I'll tell you what, there's a market here. So that's what I did, me and a friend. We opened up a few restaurants and just kept selling them to expats.
So you started the restaurants and then sold the restaurants?
So basically we'd get a shop, kit it out, change the licenses and everything, and then we'd sell it, run it for a couple of months and sell it to an expat, someone that's come over, and basically they wanted to have a restaurant or something down there.
How long did that last for you then?
I did that for just short of 3 years, and it was very lucrative. I mean, a couple £100 a year for not doing a lot of work was all right. However, you miss the seasons, you miss your families and stuff like that. I remember coming back to England and literally standing in the rain. My mum thought I'd lost the plot because I just stood in the rain looking at the sky. Hadn't seen rain for such a long time. I know it's crazy, but when you don't see rain for so you miss it. And when people say, you're mad, and I says, no, I'm not. I says,
sounds crazy.
Yeah, it sounds crazy. But when all you see is sunshine, because out there it was either sunny hot or sunny cold, even in the winter.
Right.
The winter was 20 degrees. So I'd be in shorts, and the locals, the Mallorquins as they're called, would be wrapped in scarves and stuff. I think that we were crazy, but 20 degrees is our summer here, so it's all well and good.
So you've gone, Isle of Man, were you doing the same thing as well?
No, in the Isle of Man, because basically when I went out there, I was helping a relation that had a restaurant, an Indian restaurant, and because I saw I saw an opening there, but I couldn't open an Indian restaurant because then I would be taking him on directly. So I opened a takeaway. Again, that did phenomenally well. It did very, very well because there was very little as for choice on the island, so that did well. And then the Indian restaurant that I'd originally gone over to help ended up going bust because a massive part of their turnover was takeaways.
Okay.
It wasn't my intention, but that's just the way it happens. Survival of the fittest, as they say.
Yeah. So that's quite interesting. I thought you would have gone straight into steak business.
No. So I did the Isle of Man first, and then I went to Mallorca afterwards. So there's a bit of a timeline there. Once I came back so when I was in Mallorca, in a former life, I used to go to a place called Ibiza. So I used to go. There you go. So in Ibiza,
Bradford for you.
I know that's Bradford. There you go. So or Monte Carlo, as we call it. So basically, I used to go to a place called Ibiza, and it's in Ibiza that I actually saw this style of food. I saw a restaurant, al fresco, and it was beautiful. I mean, the way they'd done it, and it was full.
Where is this in?
In Ibiza, in a place called San Antonio.
What country?
Sorry, it's one of the Balearics. So it's basically there's Mallorca, Ibiza, and Minorca.
Okay.
So they're called the Balearic Islands.
Okay.
So I used to just hop on a ferry to go between the three.
And you saw this in
Ibiza, in a
okay.
place called San Antonio, San Ana, as they call it.
Okay.
And I saw this restaurant. I was looking, and being from the restaurant background, you're always analysing things. So
yes.
I'm looking at this restaurant, and I'm looking at these people having these steaks on the rock, and I'm looking at their menu, and I'm thinking, they're making an absolute fortune. And people used to stay away from steaks simply because it's an expensive meat to get wrong.
Okay.
Yeah, so in a traditional steakhouse, 10% of your menu, 10% of what you cook or fire that night will come back because it's either overcooked or undercooked. Whereas what we do, I think in all the steaks that I've sold, I've probably had 2 come back. 2.
Only 2.
2.
Wow.
One in Portsmouth, another restaurant there, and one in London, another restaurant there. And
why did they come back?
Well, they were both ribeyes.
Right.
And the complaint was, there's fat in the middle of my steak. The only way I can equate that to is like someone saying, there's a wheel on my car. It is what it is. I told my managers, you ain't going to win an argument, you ain't going to win this argument, just change the steak and charge them accordingly.
Right.
You know, it is what it is. So we've never had a steak come back, not for quality purposes at all. So it's you can't go wrong, and that flies in the face of normal steakhouse. Like I say, any 10% of the steaks that they fire on in the evening will come back. They're either overcooked, undercooked,
right.
Because everybody's a TV chef, aren't they? Can't cook, will cook, or whatever it is, ready, steady cook. So they've all learned about steak, and they've all learned they've got to have it this way or have it that way. Going back to your question about Gordon Ramsay, who we know.
So you've met him.
You get to know everybody in this world. The thing is, I'm never going to know if let's say you like yours medium rare. Your medium rare may be different to mine because we're trained. Yeah. And in actual fact, when we've done the demonstrations, when we knock out the steaks, and we're doing the demonstration at the table and says that's medium rare, they say, oh no, I like it a little bit more cooked than that. Well, then that's not medium rare; it's medium, isn't it? But
okay.
I'm not here to get into an argument or re-educate people. That's why I found fascinating about the stones. Very simple, because that's the way they used to cook steaks, hundreds of thousands of years ago. Put a fire under a stone, the fire kills the bacteria. Throw the meat onto the rock. The heat is captured in the rock. The meat's cooked on the rock.
So, when I was researching, a lot of people have a misconception. Yeah. You're not actually cooking a raw steak, are you?
No. You're finishing off you're getting it to your liking.
Yeah.
The rock, you're not cooking it. The rock's cooking it, and it's an extremely healthy way of cooking as well. Because all we do is we add sea salt. We don't use mass-produced salt. We use sea salt, and it has that extra flavour. So all we do is sea salt, sear the meat on the rock, and then give it out to the customer, and it finishes it off perfectly. Remember, if you eat protein, you really can't put weight on with protein. Unless if you stay away from the carbs, you can consume as much protein as you like. So you're not cooking it; you're just finishing it off to your liking. So the way we've done it is that we give you a side plate. Once you've got it to your liking, simply take it off, let the meat rest, or go crack on with it. And when you're ready to eat again, just introduce it. We don't call it fine dining; we call it fun dining. So that's why we give people bibs We actually want them to enjoy and play with the meat that they've got. Enjoy it, try it with different ways. We've got plenty of butters, give you different flavours. You know, from one steak you can have so many different flavours. From one piece of meat, really, you can have 4 meals in one. You know, I get excited about it. I've sold well over 1 million steaks, and yet, when I get a new table and I've never done it before, I'm like a kid in a sweet shop, demonstrating it and telling them how to do it, because I want them to enjoy the food that they have. And that's always been the case, whether it's been at Mughls, been at the Bombay Brasserie, or whichever restaurant that we had. It's always been, we want our customers to enjoy the food, and when they enjoy the food, you're on to a winner. You can't lose.
We'll come back to the steak as well.
Okay.
But so take me back to Ibiza.
Ibiza.
You've seen this in the.
I've seen it. I came.
What happens?
I looked into it. I spoke to my brother initially about it when I first came back. I found a couple of suppliers in the UK. There's only 2 suppliers in the UK. One's based in Basingstoke, and the other one that I use is down in Reigate.
Is this for the stone itself?
Right, for the suppliers, yeah.
The meat suppliers or the stones?
They supply the units. So these are all manufactured out in China.
Okay.
So then later on in my life, I ended up spending a vast amount of time in China. I think I've been to China 30 odd times. To the point I didn't need chaperones. I just go there and do my own thing. So it was also so there was a guy called Nick Metcalf who has steak stones, and he was one of the chaps that was one of the suppliers here. Got in touch with Nick, and the rest is history, as we say. You know, we opened up and we took it mainstream, and then when we took it mainstream, we took it mainstream. So where we opened my venture that I opened in Portsmouth in a place called Port Solon.
Was that your second restaurant? So your first one was in Isle of Man.
The first one was in Isle of Man. That was called On the Rocks. Now the reason why I called it On the Rocks was there's a chap so he was the leader. So he was the first to do this. So he had a restaurant, or still has a restaurant called On the Rocks in the Isle of Man, and he does very, very well. And he has a dedicated On the Rocks restaurant. And he was in the Isle of Wight. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to open in the Isle of Man. But I initially spoke to my brother. He was a bit, sits on the fence. So I thought, will it work, won't it work? So I thought, right, I'm going to try this in the Isle of Man. So if I'm going to do it on the island, I said I'm going to copy this other guy. So basically I called mine Isle of Man, On the Rocks, Isle of Man. He was On the Rocks, Isle of Wight. I thought we could bounce off each other. I said, I'm 300 odd miles away, I hope he don't get upset. Anyway, so again...
he didn't get upset, I'm assuming.
No, he didn't, but somebody else did. There's a restaurant in Bournemouth, but I'll come back to that. But again, it was a success. And again, we stuck to our principles, quality meat, and it worked. And followed our processes, learned a lot about it, and it took off. And it took off very, very well. I ended up leaving the island because I didn't want to be on the island anymore. I wanted to be on the south coast. And a friend of mine says, go visit Port Solon. Very specifically, says, go visit Port Solon. I went to Port Solon on a summer's day, and I'm not joking, if I'd had blinkers on and I hadn't taken them off, I would have thought I was in the South France. That's how beautiful it was. Yeah. I was surrounded by multi-million-pound yachts. Alan Sugar's got his £40 million yacht there, one of hundreds of these yachts, big, beautiful. It's picturesque. But we were in a location that had 20 restaurants in total, and first year was a struggle, but then from the second year up, when we got traction and people realised what we did, we got traction. It didn't go steady; it went straight up. We were the third highest grossing restaurant on site. The only people that traded better than us or more than us were Witherspoons and Harvester. The Pizza Expresses, the Prezzos, the Chimichangas, all the chains, all the restaurant chains, we whooped.
So you were selling more and
on a Monday,
a lot better than them.
On a Monday, I would probably feed in my restaurant all the other 19 restaurants together. We used to have special Mondays and do special offers and stuff. It worked very, very well. And then there was a restaurant called that's when I called it Hot Rock. And there was a restaurant called Hot Rock in Bournemouth that were a bit upset. They're called Hot Rocks, I was called Hot Rock. but they got 40 miles away. They were getting upset for anyway.
How did you deal with it?
What did you? I politely told them to get lost.
Ah, okay.
so that was that. Being a Bradford lad, I think I use slightly more choice words. Yeah, I don't think "get lost" was the words I used. But there you go. But like I say, it took off, and to the point we did so well. We incorporated some tech into our ordering system and stuff. And when we were doing, because obviously if you're on a back street or you're not on the main road, you're not noticed. But when you're doing it on site, the regional managers report back to head office, and it goes up to the chain, to the point we had every CEO of every restaurant chain you can think come to my restaurant. So I had the CEOs of every restaurant. Some would come announced, some would come unannounced, but they all came to see what was going on, because what we did was seen as a fad, was seen as novelty. We'd proven that. Not only was a novelty, we were beating them on their own turf, and that made them sit up and take notice.
So how was it for you then? Who was the first CEO to come to?
We had
if
loads,
you remember,
the restaurant group, fine dining group. We had them all. They're all coming. Basically,
and how's that feeling for you when seeing that these big CEOs of these big establishments, they're coming to essentially see what you're all about?
It's validation to a certain point, because you're being noticed for doing something right. So remember, we're a standalone, we're one standalone restaurant in a sea of chains.
Yeah.
I remember one lady was complaining at the restaurant. I don't know, something that she was unhappy about service, so she'd waited too long. And I happened just to come to the till, the bar area where she was, and she says, I let go of the staff and said, look, I'll take over. And I said, hi, dear, can I help you? What's the problem? She says, I demand head office's number. And I said, I'll deal with it. She says, no, I demand head office's number. Because she was automatically assuming we were a chain. I says, my dear, I says, I'll deal with it. She says, no, I demand head office. I says, my dear, I am head office. And they wouldn't believe that we were just a standalone, because of the way of the operation we had. Wow. And how we were holding our own against all the multiple chains that we had either side of us, where we weren't bound by, if I wanted to do something a bit wacky or crazy, I'd do it, whereas the chains always have to go through their hierarchy, and they've always got to be seen very middle of the way. I like to be a bit edgy sometimes.
So because of the fact that you're standalone, that gave you the
of course, because we can move, because we're standalone, we can move in different directions very rapidly, and tailor make. Like one thing that we used to do was like live entertainment, which were very it was massive. So we used to do live entertainment all the time, and which worked very well for us. So, if you can entertain your customer while they're having quality food, it's a win-win situation, because food has just become very mundane, very sanitized. So you go to eat somewhere and you'll sit down and you'll eat, and that's what it is. You're just having a meal. Whereas in the olden days, you used to have a meal and you were entertained. Well, our meal would become entertainment in itself, and we sort of didn't go OTT over the top. It was the food was the entertainment, and you got to enjoy it. And if you're a meat lover, you're a carnivore, there is no better way of having a steak than the way we produce our food. It's as simple as that. I don't call it fine dining, never have done, but it's fun dining 100%. And nobody, it doesn't matter where you go in the world, they enjoy it.
No, the last time when we first came with my friend, he was really intrigued by it as well. Okay. He really enjoyed the cooking part and everything.
Because it's very involving. It's not just going somewhere and having a meal. It's taking part in that meal.
Yeah.
And remember, food's a burkah. It's a blessing. We eat food, but if you can enjoy what you eat, it's even better. I mean, sometimes I have tables of 8, 9, 10 on here, and the food comes out, and they've all been quite loud and boisterous, and then the food comes out. It's quiet. And I come to the table and say, boys, are you all okay? And they're all enjoying the food. And they said, you're not talking. He says, don't worry, we're all having a good time, because they're actually getting into what they're having. And when people enjoy their food, you're onto a winner.
Yeah.
You know, and when we did that in Portsmouth, because of the marina where we were, we had people coming in from all over the world because they had boats. We had a farmer from Australia had 100,000 head of cattle. Pound 2 cents. That's my alarm. So basically, we had 100,000 head of cattle. This farmer had 100,000 head of cattle, and he picked up his some friends in the south of France and sailed up to Portsmouth. And he came into our restaurant on the first night and second night, and he fell in love with it. He says, I have 100,000 head of cattle. He said, this would work in Australia. So what did I do? I went to Australia.
You opened up in Australia?
No, I went to Australia. I went to see them. It all comes down to money and shares and the negotiations. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it didn't. But I spent some time there in Sydney and in Perth. We had a group of restaurateurs that were Russian. Again, they brought their yacht into Portsmouth and Port Solent. They came into the restaurant, enjoyed it so much, ended up going out to Moscow. They had 5 restaurants in the city, inner circle. So there's 2 circles. There's the inner circle and there's the outer circle. Had a look at all the restaurants, did a demo out there. They wanted it. They were 100% on it. On the last day I was there, I was introduced to a sleeping partner. After he left, I was told he was FSB, basically KGB. And because of the way they operate in Russia, and I thought, you know what, I can pee people off in Bradford or in the UK and I'm all right. I pee people off in Russia, I'm going to end up fish food. So I thought, you know what, it's give it a wide berth, and then obviously things that have gone wrong lately, I'm glad I'm not there. Again, China, the Chinese want to do it. Wherever I've been, wherever they've had this or tried it, they want to do it there, because it always takes someone to do it. You know, even America, we were looking at America at some point because we had a lot of them. Again, most people come in on their yachts and they all tend to be business people, and then they try it and they think, you know what, this is good. But because it's always been seen as a fad, as a novelty, nobody's ever really gone forward. But because our restaurants, for them to work, had to be 100% steakhouses. If it was going to be combined with the traditional way of cooking a steak, it wouldn't work, because by default people would gravitate to what they normally have. Yeah. So that's where we're on a win. And if I think we've only had maybe 1 or 2 tables get up and walk out, because it tended to be women saying, I cook at home, I don't want to come out and cook. And I said, well, it's not, you're finishing off and you finish off. And even then, when we've done it for them, they've really enjoyed it. And those that really didn't fancy the idea of doing it in front of them, well, you know, you're not going to please everybody all the time.
Yeah. I enjoyed watching it.
Yeah.
And you know, that's why I'm partly back here today, you know, to try it as well.
Okay.
This time. So, you said you've sat across the table with some big CEOs.
Yeah.
Tell me what are some of the things you're talking about?
It was always. One of the reasons when you're spending £35,000 a month on meat, you get to know the people at the top of the chain. So I was always looking for consistent suppliers that could give me the quality day in, day out, not be up and down. So consistency was key for us. And obviously had to be halal.
Yeah.
But when we started making waves, I had the Prezzo family. So I was offered 60 of their restaurants when they decided to downsize, because they'd been to our restaurant. I knew them personally. They offered me 60 of their restaurants free of charge.
Wow.
Yeah, because they wanted to just get rid of the assets. So therefore, I wanted to talk to my people, so I talked to Charles, Guy, Charles from Booker and Tesco, and so Guy used to work for Marks and Spencer's as CEO of their food division, so he was brought over to Booker to elevate their standard of meat, and their standard of halal meat is exceptional. Again, they're not covert about it and they're not overt about it, but they would get hold of halal meat for me that was exceptional. Grass-fed, organic, all the boxes I wanted ticking, they ticked.
So how's that affecting the meat then?
It's all the qualities and its consistency. So so they were one of my suppliers. Got to supply me everything, but like I say, you get to know these people, and then when you're buying sufficient amounts, so you get to know the people at the top of the chain. So like I say, I used to sit across the table with Guy and Charles all the time. You know, I used to see Charles probably once a week when I was in London. You get what if you're doing the volume, these suppliers will get you whatever they want or whatever you need. And if you can't get hold of it, or they can't get, they'll find someone who can get hold of it for you. You know, so that's how they're all normal people. You know, like I say, we're living in the Isle of Man because it's an offshore centre, banking centre. I knew all the directors of all the banks, all the CEOs of your NatWest and your Coots and your HSB Internationals, and because it's an offshore, all the footballers, they all have private accounts in the Isle of Man. You see them on the plane. You know, one day I was flying back from Liverpool, and I was sat next to a guy, and I thought I recognised him, and I landed in Castletown in Isle of Man, and got off and got back, and I sat next to Howard Kendall, and he only got sacked he was the manager of Everton. Yeah. He'd only got sacked that afternoon. Right. You know, and then he was on the plane going over to the Isle of Man. I sat next to him. I was thinking, I know this guy from somewhere, but you don't like me to look. And then I got by, I was watching the news, I thought, I sat next to him. Have you ever heard of someone called Norman Wisdom?
No, I haven't.
Right, okay. The more mature person watching this will know Norman Wisdom. He used to, in the black and white films, he was a short chap, but he was a comedian. Okay. And he was best known for one of his parts called Mr. Grimsdale. Anyway, so I was once, and he used to live in the Isle of Man. I remember I was in Douglas. I was just walking up in town. And I came to a road and I was just about to cross, and I sort of looked next to me, and Norman Whitson stood next to me. So, as you do, I say, all right, Norman. And we ended up chatting. And I didn't realise that he lived there. He lived in the north of the island in a place called Andreas. Right. And he was having his car serviced, so I just thought I'd kill a few hours and I'd walk around town. But he wasn't expecting some large Asian guy next to him. So, right, Norman, with a broad Yorkshire accent chatting to him. But it was very pleasant. The people in the Isle of Man tend to be very, very pleasant and talk to everybody. It's a northern thing, isn't it? So we talk to everybody. So yeah, it was a few minutes, and I had a chat with him. I said, right, I'll take care, right? And I told him where my restaurant is. He says, pop down. So yeah, it was good fun. You get to see lots and lots of people. And when we were in Bradford, again, when we were in Bradford and the restaurant in Keighley, because of our standards that we had anybody that came to Bradford who came to the theatres, be it the Playhouse in Leeds or the theatre in Bradford, would naturally come to our restaurant. We fed everybody from all the Radio 1 DJs, the cast for Home and Away.
Wow.
Anybody that was in TV. If they came to the theatre in Bradford, they came to our restaurants. Radio presenters. One of my favourite was a guy called James Whale, who was a shock jock. I used to take food, sit on his radio station on Radio F. I remember I was kicked out one night because he had Vinnie Jones coming in. Good fun. Again, we keep in touch with it. Unfortunately, James is ill at the moment. Got cancer, but it's terminal, so but like I said, these people we've known for the last 30, 40 years. In actual fact, he then had a TV show, and he actually used to record in the restaurant. He used to record it at Mughls. Okay. Again, I find it's funny because I switch on the TV and I'll see someone, I know him. I'll open a newspaper and saw what they're doing, I know them. You get to meet in this trip, if you're good at what you do, these people always end up coming to your restaurant and you get to know them, and we chat to everybody and we have a good time. I remember when I met someone called Mark Lawn, CEO of Bradford at the time, and I walked into Mughls and he was having a drink there, and he's a big guy, and he was wearing a tight Bradford City t-shirt, and he was mumbling on about something about Liverpool, and Liverpool's my football team. Anyway, after about half an hour, I had enough of him saying, my team, my this and that, and about Bradford City. So I said, what's up with you? This and that. I said, no, Liverpool have done me over, and the rest of it. And And I said, and he kept going. I says, well, why did you support Bradford City anyway? He says, no, you misunderstand. I own Bradford City. I says, of course you do. He'd had a bit to drink by then. So anyway, so there was a computer at the counter. So I looked up Bradford CEO, and pops up a picture of Mark Lawn. Yeah, but he's wearing a suit now. So I read his Wikipedia, and it says worth about 10 million quid. So I says, you Mark? He says, yeah. He says, you're worth about 10 million quid. He says, and what? I says, couldn't you buy a better football club? So anyway, we used to rip people, but it was always within a level, and because they're used to people brown nosing them. Anyway, we don't brown nose nobody. So we're having a laughing joke with him, and he said, you lot are funny, you lot. I was like, I'm going to bring a friend back. So he actually came back, not the next night, the night after, and came back with a guy called Peter Risdale, who used to own Leeds United at that moment in time. They all used to live up in Alwoodley in Leeds, on the outskirts of Leeds. Okay. And then we already had the CEOs of Huddersfield and Halifax Town coming in, and then they were all coming in together, to the point I said, you boys all got to behave, they were funny characters, but they're just normal people, and like I say, the restaurant has always been a way of networking, and you get to know people from every kind of background, because they all go out to eat, and you all end up talking about business somehow, and you'll be surprised, how many people through the restaurant network, and that's what was always fascinating to me, because you'd end up knowing somebody just through the restaurants. Fantastic.
So, of course, your style of living would have drastically improved and increased due to your success. Because you were telling me about your yacht and you showed me the pictures. How did you balance Islam with?
Well, I was always into cars. Me and my brother were always into cars from a very early age. Back then it was an XR3i, believe it or not. Probably don't even know what an XR3i. It was a Ford Escort XR3i, and there was then the biggest the cars to look at were something like Mercedes 190E or 190E Cosworth. And then the Cosworth Whale Tails came out. So we're going back sometime. These are like old cars, classics now. So we're always into cars, and then you go through when you start earning more money, you start buying nicer cars. One of the nicest cars or most powerful cars I had back then was the TVR. So it was a TVR Chimera, 4.3 high compression. And I remember I had a relation in Harrogate that was into his TVRs, and I remember going to a place called Harrogate Horseless Carriages, owned by a guy called Nigel Kemp. Anyway, because of our contacts, he just basically tosses the keys to a Griffith 500, and I was at that moment in time driving an XR3i convertible, and I drove this TVR Griffith 500. I drove it down the block and I parked up. The car scared me. That's how powerful it was. I drove first, second, third gear down the block, and I pulled over and I said, I can't drive this car. It was a scary car, because when you drive a car, there's limits to that car. Yes. This car had no limits. It would, the more I pressed down the accelerator, the more it would just want to go. And you when this car has power, and the power in this car scared me. And I don't have any qualms saying it, because when you've been behind the wheel of a powerful car, it can be scary. And I couldn't drive it. But I ended up buying one, and that was fun. It was a lot of fun. So cars were my thing. I ended up buying a Bentley Continental GTC. That was a lot of fun, very thirsty. I think when I was driving it fast, I'd be averaging about 3 miles a gallon. Alhamdulillah, I got it now. But then because I was in Port Solent and I'm surrounded by yachts. Initially, I'd been around them for 6-7 years before I actually thought or got into them, and I only really got into them because I'd seen them. I mean, I'd work. It's like looking outside and seeing cars. I'd look outside. I'd see 100 of these multi-million-pound yachts. They were just there, parked up, moored up. And never meant anything to me because I thought, well, what fun can you have out with them? You can go out with them, this and that, and that's it. You can have more fun in my car. Wrong.
Yeah.
Wrong. Other way around.
So that's why.
Yeah. No, cars mean nothing. Yachts is where it's at. You could, especially down there.
Because every extremely wealthy person buys a yacht.
Well,
they've all got them, and I've never understood why.
Well, because
Is it like a competition between
No,
them, or?
no. I don't think it's competition because it's a nice lifestyle. You know, to go out on a yacht on a beautiful summer's day down in the sun, and it's addictive. You know, it's a very expensive lifestyle because you go out to the Isle of Wight and back. You know, you've used 400 quid's worth of juice there and then. And the maintenance on these yachts is not for the light-hearted. I remember when I had my Bentley service, my first service cost me £7,000. I thought I had to sit down and thought, so I need, you know, gas and air. But yachts is a different ball game altogether. But like I say, I started going out. Initially, it was because a friend of mine, he had a Bentley. So basically, exactly the same as mine. And my number plate was 007, he was 006. So there's quite a few things that were in common. We used to get on with each other. And he said, Sonny, you must come out on my yacht. I didn't know he had a yacht at that moment in time. And so we went out. And he had this yacht for about a year and a half. And then he'd only been out on it twice. I don't know why, but he'd only been out on it twice. Anyway, we started hanging out. He used to go to my restaurant. He used to live in Epsom, or he still lives in Epsom, a guy called Martin. And so basically, and then after we started going out, there wasn't a weekend that he didn't come down and we'd go out. Literally, on a bank holiday weekend, he'd come down on Friday evening and struggle to get back to work for a Tuesday morning because we would literally get out the boats all the time. And even when he wasn't there, I said, "Oh, do you mind me going out?" Because basically, I didn't have a license. I've got half a Hellman's license now, but we had a skipper who was retired Navy, and he would take us out, and he would then teach me how to sail a boat, which is what I've sort of done now. But like I say, we're going out, and then I used to say, when he went back, he said, "Sonny, the key, keep the keys. If you ever want to go out on the boat, take it out." So there's that. And I always make sure, you know, if I've got something, someone's lent me something of value, always make sure it was clean. If you come back to the boat, I says, you know, this boat looks like brand new. So Sonny, whenever he literally said, "You want the boat, take it, it's yours." To the point he would ring me and say, "Sonny, I'm coming down this week anyway, any chance I can have my boat?" And I'd start laughing and joking with him. But it wasn't just him. There was quite 2 or 3 other people that had yachts. And again, these are £3 million, £2 million yachts. I had the keys for all of them. I would literally, it's like having a Bugatti, a Ferrari or a Lamborghini. I'm sitting there thinking, which one shall I take out today? And it was funny because they all trusted me. I had the keys for all these yachts. And I'd sit and think, which one do I want to take out today? I mean, I would maintain them, you know, if there was some bird crap or this and that, I'd just wash it down. And they liked the fact that I looked after their boats as if they were mine. And they were pristine, you know, whenever, and again, I was free to use them whenever I wanted. My family would come down, I'd say to Martin, to my skipper, "Can you come down, take us out?" No problem, you know, we'd go out, go for a sail, go for and it's addictive because these yachts are beautiful. They're basically hotels on water, and a lot of fun, yeah. So I actually want to get back into that. Because there's nobody doing a yacht hire who caters for our brown. It's a very close sort of market. Getting a berth holding a parking spot for your boat in some of these marinas it's very cliquey. But because I've been in these marinas and I pretty much know everybody there, it's very easy for me. Whereas they don't like outsiders. Sometimes colour's an issue, whether they say it or not. I joke with people, you know. I used to come out and they say, "Sonny, we're heading out today." So I'm just nipping over to Cali. I'll go pick up some cousins. I says, "You coming back to bring a fresh load back?" He says, No, I'll only come back halfway and throw them out in the water. No, so it was these kind of jokes. But you know what? Some people be offended. These don't offend me. So, you know, because basically I was looking at the bigger picture. I laugh and joke with them. I get what I want. So that's something I want to actually go into yacht hire because there's nobody doing this in England. When I looked into it, there's nobody doing this, and that's something I really want to get into because going out on a yacht, it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. So that was a lifestyle thing that I got very sort of used to. But as you know, I'm back in Bradford, and the reason I'm back in Bradford is because everything that I made, and I made some silly money, I lost, and maybe it was a test from Allah because everything I'd done up to that point involved alcohol. And as I know now, you know, it's not the right path.
So talk me through that. So you've opened in London.
Yeah, I've opened in London, and I opened in central London, where my rental rates were stupid. So my rental rates.
So what we're talking?
We're talking hundreds of thousands of pounds, and when I say hundreds, I'm talking times 2, times 3, and then the fit out. And again, because I was doing well in Portsmouth, they also doubled my rent there because it was a rolling lease, and when they see you doing well,
okay,
So, but like I say, London was a miscalculation, and everything that I knew. It would have been better, in hindsight now, if I'd opened on the outskirts of London, I would have probably still been there. But opening in central London didn't work for me. Couldn't get advertising, so basically you need to be with one of the advertising agencies there. Couldn't get in with anybody because basically my steakhouse was next to a quarter mile, 200, 300 yards away from a Flatiron or a Hawksmoor. And they were already covered by these advertising agents, so they wouldn't touch me. And in London, when you start out, you need these on board to push what you do. And then once you've got that momentum, then it takes on, But the initial inertia wasn't there, and I need to do £20,000 a week just to stand still. You know what I mean? So that was a lesson. So that closed down. Portsmouth closed down. Then we had COVID and all the rest of it, and that was a nail to our industry. It really, really was. And people say, well, you got help from the government. When your rents are 150 or 200,000 pounds a year, getting 20,000 pounds from the government is a drop in the ocean. It really is. And these landlords are ruthless. They're ruthless landlords. So I ended up coming back to Bradford.
In between you closing down and opening this up, talk me through that, your mindset, what you're going through.
Well, there's a lot of sort of when things don't work out, you're always looking at why. And again, because of my network of friends around me and the friends and family that I have, they sort of kept me strong because I lost lottery money. It's not silly money that I lost. But again, because of what we did, I didn't lose the connections, but I lost the money.
Yeah.
And alhamdulillah, that connections, they still keep in, they're still in touch, and they want you to do well because they want you to come back to where you were before. Yeah. So alhamdulillah, like I say, it's a lot of soul searching. What have I done wrong? What could I have done better? And remember, it's not conditions, it's decisions that ultimately end up, cause where you end up. The conditions can be anything, but I made some wrong decisions, and Allah tests you, and maybe when I had everything that I wanted, I wasn't as close to Allah as I should have been. Whereas now, I don't miss a namaz. I'm on time every time, inshallah. I can't remember the last time I missed a namaz, if I've missed one. It becomes a norm, doesn't it?
Yes.
And it becomes very much part of your life. And ultimately, that's the ultimate success. People say what success is living on your own terms, isn't it? That's what all success is.
That's what we're told. Freedom of time, freedom of money.
That's right, living on your own terms.
Yeah.
If you can live on your own terms, then that's success. But really, success is living within the confines of Islam, and that's it, really, because that allows for every aspect of what we do, whether it's your family, your friends, this, that, and the other. That's the true success. Will we be able to achieve it? Only Allah knows, So, inshallah, we'll get there.
How did you even manage to stay strong? Because I've seen so many people go through failures who one day they're pious people or they're close to Islam, but because of that test, because of that difficulty, they've not been able to deal with it, and it's taken them far away from the religion.
Well, again, it comes back to those people around you. If you've got good people around you, brother, I'll be honest with you, there's the days I've sat and thought, where's it gone? From making tens of thousands of pounds a week, large profit, to thinking, how am I going to buy my next meal? You know, it's hard work, but you know, Allah only tests us as much as we can take. You know, and after all hardship, there is ease. Alhamdulillah. You know, you come out the other way, you come out stronger for it. But I firmly believe that if you've got the right friends and family around you, Allah can, you know, any test can be thrown out, and as long as you've got the right grounding, then you should be able to come through. You know, it's not been easy, you know. Well, you know, these are tests out there, and we're all tested, whether through loss of money, loss of friends and family. We're all tested constantly, and then, like I said, this is just a blink of an eye. Like I say, I'm now heading towards 52. My dad died when he was 57, so a lot of my friends and family sort of keep saying, "Oh, Sonny, shut up, will you?" So I keep saying I've got another 5-6 years left, because I always go by how the top line sort of and what time they sort of passed on. So I say, I've got another 5 years left, or I've got another 10 years left. And I don't even say another 10 years left. To make it real, I say I've got another 10 summers left, I've got another 10 Ramadans left, because then it becomes very real.
Then you can
know,
appreciate it.
You can focus on what it is, because we're not here forever. You know, I lost my my good friend, my brother Mohammed. We lost his father a year ago, just over a year ago. And Allah works in mysterious ways. If that hadn't, when my father passed away, I had a set of 3 friends that were close around me. I said this to you before: Mohammed, Isra, Doc, and Nadeem, Model. And I swore that I would be there for them. And I remember when Mohammed's father passed away, I was here, I was doing the work in here, and it's funny really, because his elder brother Yachts, he phoned me and says, I've got a guest at the house. And I says, who's that? He says, oh, well, you speak to him. So I spoke to him and I says, who's this? He says, Mohammed. I says, I don't know Mohammed. I'm joking, because I've spoken to him for such a long time. I said, I don't know Mohammed. Who's this, the Mohammed? And he says, oh, shut up, will you? He says, anyway, I'm at my dad's house. and I'd already just finished up here. They live down in Frizinghall. So I said, you know what, I'll be 3 minutes, put the kettle on, because I was already heading over that way. And I wasn't meant to be there that night. And Mohammed wasn't meant to be there that night. And that's the night his father passed away. And we were there. So basically we got into the room and we sat down, and Uncle had seen me, and first thing he said was, Sonny, you put on weight. And the next thing he said to his son Khalid, he said, oh, go get him some food. That was funny. And then we were there for a few hours, and then come 10 o'clock, Uncle used, because we're all working, he said, right, well, go home, you know, we'll continue this another time. And me and Mohammed had got down to Shipley roundabout and got a phone call saying that Uncle had collapsed. Got back to the house, and I was the last person to do CPR on him before he passed away. But look at we weren't supposed to be there that night. You know, look how Allah works in mysterious ways. I wasn't supposed to be there. Mohammed wasn't supposed to be there. We were there, you know, when my uncle left. And, you know, hopefully a bit of a strength to the family, because, you know, what I feel so sorry for is not only them, but also my other friends that haven't lost their parents yet, because I lost my parent, I lost my mother 10 years ago, I lost my father 32 years ago. So I know the pain that they're going to go through. And, you know, it is what it is, and it's all a test from Allah, but, you know, inshallah they'll be able to deal with it as best as possible, and hopefully I'm there for my friends and family as they were there for me. So.
Well, that's been great. I guess just one last question to finish off. So, what are you advising youngsters who are watching this, young Muslims who are watching this, who, you know, we're in the age where everyone wants to be rich, everyone wants to be a millionaire, they all want to achieve. What are you telling them?
Success isn't financial. I'll tell you that now. So you know, I can point to millionaires and billionaires. I get them on the phone, and they're not as happy as somebody who's poor, or someone who's content with their family life. Success is living life on your terms within the confines of Islam. You don't need to be rich. You just need to be in your deen. You need to know who you are as a person. You need to, you know, the values of your forefathers. They're the things that you need to hold. not some influencer or this and that, and because you don't know. I mean, our greatest influence is who? Our Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam. He's an influencer, not these people and these. Unfortunately, they're going down that route. Stick to what they want. If they want to do work, or if they want to be successful in their working life, absorb in it. You know, and do something they enjoy. If you can do something you enjoy, it's not work. It really. What's the saying? If you do something you enjoy, you'll never work a day in your life. And if you can do that, and also not forget your roots and live within the confines of Islam, then you are a very successful person. Because when you grow up and you have, and the biggest decision, and a good friend of mine, Riz, always used to say, the biggest decision you'll ever make is your partner. And so if you have the right partner, your life will be a breeze. And I always think back when he says that, because it's true. If you pick the right wife or the right spouse, or the right, then life's easy, because we all cohabit, like I say, if you have the right partner, they will be there when you need that support. Whether it's your family, someone's passed away, or financial, whatever comes in front of you, as long as you have the right support, you'll get through it. Alhamdulillah. It's as simple as that, and that's success. Success is doing what you want within the confines of Islam, making sure you get up, and in this day and age, especially in this day and age, if you can keep your roots, keep your deen, and also be successful in your field, get the right partner, that's success. That's more than having a Lamborghini outside, because that Lamborghini ultimately means nothing. Not that I don't want to have a Lamborghini, I don't like them. If I can get getting in and out of them. Bentley's more my cup of tea, comfort and style. But like I say, it's no, that's it really. What's success? I don't know. The answer to that is I'll tell you at the end of my life. But success is being granted Jannah. 100%. That's the ultimate success, and you can only do that if you live within your deen, do what's prescribed of you. It's very easy to do, People think it's hard. It's not hard at all. Namaz time, read namaz. Simple, straightforward. Do the 5 pillars. It's.
What if you're struggling? How do you get into it?
If you're struggling,
you mentioned from your personal experience.
No. If you're struggling, you should turn to Allah. Allah put the struggle there for you to test you. And I firmly believe that. I've said that to everybody. I've got friends that are multimillionaires. They still have struggles. May not be financial struggles, but they have struggles. They'll have struggles with their family life, or this or that, or children, this and that. I say, come back to Islam. Money just helps you buy things. When you bought everything, what do you buy with? What do you use that money? What do you do? And that's the fitna itself. You leave it to your kids. What are they going to do with that money? And I've seen all this. I've seen all this firsthand. Firsthand, after my father passed away, I was shocked at what I saw in my family. Still am. 32 years on. And these are, I'm shocked from what I see in life. Sometimes it saddens me what people do for something that they will not take with them. They're born with nothing and they'll go with nothing. The amount of people who bedded up at Schoolmore and other places, they go with a simple cloth. I know it's just their deeds that they go with. Yes. So and I say to all the youngsters, listen to their parents. Don't be upset with their parents, even if they're as long as they're not taking it out of Islam. What they say goes. If they're doing something wrong, educate them. Respectfully. But do something, and don't, like I say, we're in this world where the rise of the influencers is that, and what I see shocks me to a certain extent. Kids in this day and age have enough pressures, but as long as if they can keep to their deen, alhamdulillah, then there's nothing that they can't it's the answer to everything, isn't it? Yes. I'm no Bible preacher, I'm no Taliban, and this is what I say, some of you going on Taliban. I said, no, not at all. I said, it's very simple and straightforward. Our deen gives you the answers for everything. And if you're struggling, you should turn to your deen, because that's what brings you through.
Yes.
100%. If you believe in our deen, you shouldn't suffer from depression. I know the people think, oh, Sonny, you're hardcore. I'm not. It's simple and straightforward. Trust in your Lord. Do zikr. Brother, alhamdulillah, you give me this book, I'm shocked. Alhamdulillah, I look at it and, because zikr, zikr is the way it's at, come 2:30 in the morning, because of, especially now, and because we work on social hours, I'll go home and I'll do a bit of zikr before, because I can start my fajr at 2:30 now. So why would I go to sleep? I'll just read it and then go to sleep. And so I end up doing a bit of zikr at night time. It brings you closer to your Lord. And especially as you get more mature and you start looking at your life and this and that and the other, it really is, when we grew up, Islam was around us.
Yes.
Because of the community that we were in. Now I choose to go back to Islam because I know where we're going. And without direction, you're rudderless. You're not going. Islam will give you that direction. So if you're upset or there's certain, listen, people are tested. I've been tested, but nothing compared to what other people. I hear some of other people's stories and, cancer, loss of family, the family's turning their back on them, this, that, because of stupidity, having nothing. And I think, so, alhamdulillah, I thought I had it bad. But people are testing, I said, go back to Islam, I had a brother, I've got another brother, a little story. He, again, afraid of heights, vertigo, and didn't like to go over bridges. And so when you're going down to Sheffield by Meadowhall,
yes.
and his knuckles would go white because he's holding on to it so strong. And I said flippantly, I've got something that cure that. And this is a guy who's had this fear for a long time, this condition for a long time. And I once sat in the car with him for a couple of hours, and I put zikr on, and we went driving down Halifax Way. There's that big steep drop, and I could see him tensing up. And all I did was we did Allahu, Allahu. We did zikr, and I got louder because I wanted him to concentrate on me. And you know what? He forgot there was a cliff there, and he was driving. And it's amazing. He says, "I'm probably concentrating on you," because I was going louder now because I could see him tensing up, and I knew. I says, "Look, I'd take it because it's how your mind works." Have you ever noticed how you can't do anything bad or think a bad thought when you're doing zikr? Think about it.
Yes.
I remember I've got a bit of a temper, right? So basically, I remember I was in a car and someone cut me up and I started effing and blinding, and I had somebody in my car. I can't remember who it was, and all he did is started reading Surah Fatiha, and do you know what? There's like a light switch. All that anger went bang, gone. Honestly, I was amazed. I'm thinking, he started reading reading Surah Fatiha in the car, and literally my anger dissipated in a second. It was like someone flicked a switch, and everything where I was effing and blinding that guy who was cut in front of me, and it gone. And I actually said, "Wow!" I actually said to him, "How do you do that?" So I did this, I did it. And like I say, I keep going back to your zikr, going back and remembering Allah. You can't think of a bad thought when you're doing zikr. It's impossible. Try it. It's impossible. I've tried with a few people. I says, right, Allahu, Allahu, we're doing that, a different zikr, this and that, whatever. And I said, think of a bad thought. This is impossible. And again, I'm not a learned person. I'll tell you straightforward. I'm just someone that knows that I was fortunate to be born a Muslim. I didn't practice it always in my life, but now I can't see myself not missing a namaz ever. In actual fact, if I missed a namaz, I think there was something wrong with me. But that's just the way we
all wish to be in that position.
Well, no, have to be. I have to be in that position, and it's a mindset, isn't it? And it's not a want, it's not a must. It's I will. I will get up and I read namaz. It's a must for me. And if I don't do that, then it's not me. And that's brought me back from the day, because we all go through tests, don't we? And if you can hold on to your deen, and it'll bring you back, and it always has done and always will do. And it's there. It's not new. The Quran's not new. It's there. Anybody who reads it, and it's like I say, these people that want to divide us, all they're doing is bringing people to Islam. There's more people joining Islam now than ever.
Yes.
From the groups, from the demographics that they want, that would think typically white, Caucasian, they're coming to Islam in their droves because it's the truth. But we didn't know that. We were brought up in it. These reverts, they shame us because their love for Islam is stronger than, and we were born in it. We were lucky. That's what I find sometimes astonishing is the depth of how much they know, and how much do we know. In actual fact, I'll tell you when. During COVID, because it's like when things are taken away from you. So during COVID, we couldn't go to the mosque, we couldn't do our Jummas and this and that and the other, and we couldn't do our Taraweeh. And then because you've been doing it all your life, you're thinking, so I'm missing something here. And I remember, and I learnt more during COVID about Islam than I'd ever been taught. Because I was actually going for it and looking for it,
So, seems like you found the thing that I love and find amazing is that you seem content with where you are now.
Alhamdulillah, you're listening.
And that's the main thing, I guess, being content with where you
I'm sat on top of a hill in Portsmouth overlooking, I'm sat in my Bentley.
Seem happier here than...
Well, no, I like the seaside, believe me. It's a beautiful... I love watching the sun come up out of the water. Yeah. But I remember sat on top of the hill, looking down on over Portsmouth, and I'm thinking, right, I've earned myself God knows how many thousands of pounds this week. What am I going to go buy? And then the Bradford lad will kick in and say, "What that? I'm going to go down and get a meal deal from Tesco's." So the thing is, it's quite funny really, because money doesn't make you happy. All money does is gives you access to other things, and if you don't use that money wisely, it can be. It's not a blessing.
It can make things a lot more difficult.
Yeah, very much so. Like I say, we've all got our own demons. If you're spoiling your kids, then they'll always grow up thinking this is the lifestyle I should have, and sometimes it's a rude awakening when they don't get that. So again, everything is in moderation, as they say. And one thing I'd say to the kids, if they're watching, is don't depend on anybody but Allah. Go for your own. Don't say I'm going to get this off my mum and dad, because it may not ever happen. You know what I mean? And it's a rude awakening when it doesn't happen. So do your own work as if you've got nobody to rely upon. Have a good set of friends and family, because they will be your backbone throughout your life. And when you get married, marriage will be the most important decision you'll ever make, because that person will be your partner for life. Pardon me.
Yeah.
That's my recipe for success.
It's a very interesting recipe, and I think it's a respected recipe, because a lot of people who've been through life would advise similar things as well.
Yeah, no, it's. We always talk about success, and what is success? It's living life on your own terms. Yeah. And if you can live that life within the confines of Islam, that is success.
Perfect. That's the best way to define it.
And yeah, 100%.
So, just to conclude then, what's the future for you then?
We've got this one open in Bradford. Alhamdulillah, it's got the traction that we thought it'd eventually gain. Inshallah, what I want to do is, again, I want to do exactly what I wanted to do before, but this time we're looking stay within the Brown Pound, and we're looking at opening further locations in Manchester. Wherever there's a good, strong Muslim hotspot, I want to give or open an establishment within a strong Muslim hotspot throughout the UK. So, and also beyond. So basically, we're also looking at the Middle East. So if we can open up a Hot Rock in Manchester, in Sheffield, in Luton, in Birmingham, in Leicester, in London on the outskirts, where there's like in East London or down by Tooting, where there's a big strong Muslim company. These are sort of the locations that we're sort of looking at. That would be my goal. Inshallah, we'll always aim for that and see where we can do it, and then keep giving people a fun dining experience while having probably one of the best steaks that they'll ever have. Because the amount of times that I've heard someone say that's the best steak I've ever had, from a mature person that's had many, many steaks, and if I had £1 for every time, I'd be a rich man again. Inshallah.
Well, I pray that Allah gives you the success.
Ameen. Thank you very much for
and I pray Allah keeps you strong in the deen.
Ameen.
And
no doubt. I've got good people around me, you see.
Yeah.
Even if I divert,
Yeah.
You know, in the olden days, you used to have that bet, that stick. Well, my mates don't need a stick. They just say, "Oi, alhamdulillah." But that's you know, good friends are those that are there with you through the bad times. Good friends are those that'll tell you when you're going wrong, and they're not scared of upsetting you.
Yeah.
They're the best people because they'll keep you on the straight and narrow.
Yeah.
And if everybody had good friends, alhamdulillah, we'd be all in a much better place.
Yes, 100%. Well, thanks for your time.
No problem, brother.
Hope you enjoy your book.
Ameen, thank you very much.
Looking forward to trying this steak now as well.
Alhamdulillah.
You got my taste buds.
Listen, you got me salivating as well. Oh my God, alhamdulillah. No, we'll get some food. Well, I might even join you actually and take it from there.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. If you are watching this, that means you got to the end of this podcast. I really appreciate that, and for a first podcast, I think that was an incredible journey. Make sure you visit Sonny at Hot Rock Cafe. I've got the details in the description of where you can find him. And now do me a favor, give me a like, subscribe to this channel, and comment who you want to see here next. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.